Hello,
Mario, how are you today?
good. And how are you?
Hashem, all ready for
Good.
Shabbos?
Not really.
Not yet.
Not yet.
You have some time.
Yeah.
Hey, how are you?
I was.
Hashem, how are you?
Good, good. Okay. I guess we'll wait for Ernie
In Brera?
in Brera. Mario is here, I see.
Yes.
Hello, are you hiding?
No.
Well, you're not showing yourself.
Well, I'm trying to find some papers that I misplaced in my desk.
Okay, good luck.
Yeah. Hmm.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Afternoon.
Hello.
Hello.
Afternoon.
Okay, we're in Menachos Daf Dalid.
After.
So we asked the question: if the Kohen, was preparing a mincha and he had in mind an animal zevach, Mali Omer Rab Shimon, what would Rab Shimon say? Do we say time in Rab Shimon mishum machshava d'minkar loy pasla? Do we say that we said that if a person offers a machvas with an intention of marcheshes, we said that mincha is okay because what we see in front of us is clearly not what his intention is. And here, Amachshava de Minkru, here also, if the Kohen says, I have intent to shlomim, and he's working with flour and oil, we know that his intent does not fit. O Dilma, maybe it's a Xeris Akosu. You know why Rab Shimon said that if you offered a mincha with the improper intent, it's okay? Time Rab Shimon shouldn't see the Zos Taras mincha. No matter what kind of mincha, it'll work. But it doesn't say Zos Taras mincha ve'azevach, right? Zevach lo iksiv. And maybe we would say it is not good. Armalei klumi ganal sof daivus Rab Shimon. We don't really know what Rab Shimon holds, so we don't have an answer. Because Karabalo Mishani lay, we have three ways of reconciling the Brisa where there was a steer in Rab Shimon. Kirabalo Mishani lay mishum kushi dabaya. The question that Abaya had. Why should a machshava, improper machshava regarding the bailim be any different than improper machshava regarding the type of korban it is? According to the Zos Toras HaMincha, and that makes all menachos okay, no matter what your kavanah was, that should work by achatas too, because there's a pasuk Zos Toras achatas. The chareva, the minchas chareva of blula, that also should have been okay. It should have been an exception to the rule, yet it's not. So none of the attempts to reconcile Reb Shimon works here. Then our Mishnah said, any mincha that you have an improper intention, it doesn't make a difference. The mincha is kosher. Chutz, the minchas chote, minchas knos. We said that certain averas, you bring sliding scale chatas. If you eat dam or chaylev, you bring one standard chatas, a sheep or a goat. But if you are tameh, you don't know you're tameh, you walk in the base of Mikdash, there it's a sliding scale. If you have wealthy, you bring an animal. Less wealthy, you bring a pair of birds. If you're less wealthy, you bring a mincha. That's called a minchas chote. The minchas knos is the mincha that is brought as part of the sota process. So our Mishnah said that a person has improper intent for minchas chote, minchas knos, it's also, the mincha is not kosher. Bishma minchas chote, chatas kayrachman. The Torah befeirush calls it a chatas. Lo yasim alei hashemen, v'lo yiter alei levana ki chatas hi. We know the general rule by chatas, a chatas which is offered shalol lishma is possible. So fine, we understand minchas chote. Ela minchas knos minoma. How do we know that if you offer a minchas knos shalol lishma that it's possible? The Tani Tama Kamed Rav Nachman, minchas knos moisr nadav. Person donated a minchas knos. He set aside a certain amount of money. Then the price of the flour dropped. So he has extra money. What do you do with the extra money? It can go for purposes of to purchase olas nadava. So, Amr le shaper ka'amres maskeres oven ksivba. It talks about oven by minchas knos. Uvachatas ksiva also nasan lachem l'shem laseis es oven ha'eda. We make a hekesh oven. Ma chatas moisr nadava. Just like money that is extra for a chatas also can go in nadava. Af minchas knos moser nadava ukachatas, and we continue the gzeir shava. Ma chatas psula shalol lishma. If you offer a chatas shalol lishma, it's possible. Af minchas knos psula shalol lishma. So we have our source. Elamiyata ashram yei pasul shalol lishma. We can make the same gzeir shava to ashram. Now we know that an ashram shalol lishma is kosher, but the Gemara is saying, well, based on the way you're learning, an ashram shalol lishma should be possible. The gomar oven mechatas. It says, "V'lo yadava Hashem v'nasa avono" by an ashram. So there also says oven. So the Gemara says, "Donin oven me oven." The chatas is learned to a minchas knos. They both say oven. They ain't donin avono me avon. By an ashram it says his oven avono. The Gemara says, "My nafkamina, who cares?" They make a hekesh between the words v'shava koin and v'akoin. Zui shiva, zui bia. It means the same thing. Even if the words are not exact, you can make an equation. That's number one. V'od ligmar avoina avoina. May oven the shmias kol. By a chatas, it also says, so based on the way we're learning between Gzeir Shava, an asham should be like a chatas, that if you offered it shalol lishma, it should be possible. So the Gemara says, you know what? The Gzeir Shava is for a specific thing. Ki gamri Gzeir Shava lemoisr nedavud gam. We don't extend it all the way to all the dinim of a chatas. We extend it to the, what do you do with the extra money? That it goes in the nadava. But we don't take the Gzeir Shava all the way. You can't learn a half a Gzeir Shava. If you have a Gzeir Shava, you learn the whole thing. So no, Gali Rachmana Gabi Chatas, it says V'shachad Osa L'chatas, Osa Lishma Kshera, Shelo Lishma Psula. Only by a Chatas, if you shechted Shelo Lishma as a Pasul. Aval Kol Kochim, Bein Lishman, Bein Shloshman Ksherim, but all the other Karbonis, based on this V'shachad Osa L'chatas, says that a improper Shelo Lishma Kavana will not invalidate other karbanos. So we got to go back to the drawing board, start again. Ela minchas chote minchas knos, the psulin shelo yishma minola. How do I know, like our Mishnah said, that if you offer a minchas chote or minchas knos shelo yishma, that it's possible? So chatas time of my. Why do we say that a chatas that shechted shalol l'shma, it's not good? Mishum diksiv ba hu. It says v'shachat oso b'mkom asher chatas sa'olah lifnei Hashem chatas hu. Hanami here as well by the minchas choite. It says ki chatas hi. Hach ksiv b'hu hi. It says by Nosham, V'ktiro sama kohen hamizbecha ishel Hashem, Asham hu. So if you're learning from this type of Gzeres HaKasuv to exclude, if you offered it Shalol Lishma, it should be the same thing in Asham. So the Gemara says, Ahu, the Asham hu is teaching me something else. There it's written, after you do Zrika Sadam of the Asham, you have to offer the innards and the chalivs on the Mizbeah. But if you didn't do it, it doesn't invalidate the korban. So since the Asham who is talking about after Haktar Seimurim, it doesn't invalidate the korban if you did it Shalol Lishma, Kidatanya. Aval Asham loy nemer bahu ela achar Haktar Seimurim. Hu atzmo shalok to Emur of Kosher. To tell me, even if the Emur wouldn't even offer L'chatchila, the korban is still good. Elahu lamali. Why does it say Hashamu? Look, Ravuna Amarav. Asham shenitik l're'iyah. An asham that, let's say the owner of the asham died before it could be offered. The din is the asham goes to graze until it gets a mum, and then it's the money is sold for no. So asham, and the asham is right now unblemished. So asham shenit was unblemished, sent into pasture, and someone took the animal vushchato stam without any kavana shechted it. The din is kosher l'shumayna. Nitik in, but it had to be assigned to the herd. Loy nitik lo. Why? Because amakrohu bavyasu yeh. It remains an asham. That's why asham hu is there, but nothing to teach us about kavan. Amara. Minchas ha'oimer, on the 16th day of Nisan, they offered a mincha tzibor called minchas ha'oimer. This allowed the chadash, the new grain, to be eaten. Minchas ha'oimer shekansa shalol lishma psul. If this seems to be another exception to the rule that normally a mincha offered shalol lishma is okay. Here Rav says a minchas oimer that the kmitza is done shalol lishma psul. Hoyelu bos lahatir v'lo hitira. the purpose of a minchas ha'omer is not atonement. It's to be matir the new grain. Now, this minchas ha'omer that was offered l'shem minchas machvas does not fulfill its mission of being matir the new grain. So therefore, Rav says it's completely possible. V'chein hata omer b'asham nazir. An asham, a nazir, a stam nazir says 30 days. If he becomes tamei, he has to bring korbanos. One of them is an asham, so that he can count new 30 days. So Rav is saying that an asham nazir that's offered with improper intent, or asham mitzorah, which also allows the mitzorah to be eat korbanos, sheshachton shelo lishma psulin. See, if the function of the korbanos is to be machshir somebody, not for atonement, then if the hachshara doesn't take place, then the korban is possible. Hodu ba'ala hachshir v'lo l'chshira. So the Gemara is going to ask a kasha from our Mishnah Tanan. Rav said that a minchas oimer that is offered with the improper intent is possible. But our Mishnah said, Kol avnochi shenikbetzu shelo lishmam kshemis. Rather, ela shelo ola l'baylim mishum chayva. The baylim have to bring another korban, but that original korban could be eaten. Chutz minchas koiter minchas knos. Except, as we learned, except for the sinner's mincha and the minchas knos. However, if Rav is correct, another exception would be the minchas oimer. And for the Gemara, kiktoni bo yochi, we're talking about minchas choite, minchas knos. These are private, individual korbanos. Bo tzibur loikton. A mincha brought by the tzibur, like a minchas oimer, was not dealt with. Another answer, kitani bo biglalatzno. The Mishnah is talking about menachos that are brought as independent korbanos. Bo biglal zevach loktan. But a mincha so the minchas ha'omer comes together with a keves, with a sheep. So it's not brought independent. That's why it's not mentioned in our Mishnah. Now, number two, the Mishnah is also dealing with menachos that are not tied to time. A minchas oimer is brought on the 16th day of Nisan. Our Mishnah didn't mention the ones that are tied to time. Okay. Among the statements that Rav made, Amar Mar, he said that the Asham Nazir, so that if he became Tameh, he has to bring korbanos so he can start his new Naziris. So that korban is brought to be machshir here. Or an Asham Mitzorah who has to be outside of the machanos, and he has to bring korbanos in order to allow him to be purified fully. If these two korbanos were offered shalom, they're possible. Tanat. Another mission in Zvachim. Just like we've been quoting from the first mincha in Menachos, we're now going to quote from the first mincha in Masechta Zvachim that we learned 120 blot ago. Kol hazvachim sheshachton shelo lishmon kshev. All korbanos that are shechted shelo lishmon are still okay. Ela shelo yolu l'balim shum chayv. But the Bailim have to bring the korban if they were obligated to bring a korban. Chutz mi Pesach v'chatas. At Pesach and Chatas, if they were offered shelo lishma, are possible. Now, if it's correct, the way Rav learned that an Asham Nazir and an Asham Mitzorah are also types of animal korbanos, that if you did shelo lishma, they would be possible. The misa listening nami chutz me asham nazir v'asam mitzayra. The bola hashav lo lichshiro. These should have been listed as exceptions as well. And for the Gemara, kivadika asham zez v'asham ilas. There are other ashams brought for theft, certain type of theft. Asham that is brought if you're moil behegdish. There, it's not lachshira. Dilachapara asham. Those come for atonement, lo psikale. So the Tana couldn't say all ashams. So since it couldn't say all ashams, it didn't deal with any of the ashams. You told me, why are these things possible? Shalol lishma, because they come to fix the person of some defect, and they didn't lead to the fixing. I mean, the asham gezelos and asham meilos also have a purpose. They come to atone. If they didn't do the atonement because it was done shalol lishma, it also should be possible. On Rav Yirmiyah, the Torah makes a distinction between korbanos that are machshir and korbanos that are mechaper. Mechaper misbu de asul achar misa. Somebody has to bring a certain korban, and he designates the korban, but it's not offered yet, and he dies. We're going to see there are certain korbanos that can be offered on behalf of the Bailim, even though he died, by the Yorshim. But korbanos that are brought lahachshir, machshir and less buddha asul achar misa. If it was come to correct the individual's died, no point in being machshir him. Where do we see this distinction? This not. Ha'isha she'viya chatosa. When a woman gives birth, she has to bring a chatas and an ola. So let's say she brought her chatas, had not brought the ola. Yavo yorshin olos. The yorshin can bring the ola. Now, if olasa umes, if she brought the ola but didn't bring the chatas, lo yaviu yorshin chatas. Well, that we know. Chatas shemesu balea, that it's the animal has to go lemisa. That's a halach l'mosh mesun. But the Meforshim say that the chatas, basically in that case, is machshir her, because it allows her to eat korbanos. But when you bring a chatas and an ola, the ola is for atonement. So here's an example where a korban that's brought lechaper is offered, but the korban brought to be machshir is not offered. So there's a distinction. However, maski for Rabbi Yehuda Breder of Shimon ben Pasi. Machshir nami mi less buddha asul achar misa. The Gemara tried to give us a rule now that korbanos that are machshir somebody are not brought lachar misa. The Gemara says it's not so, vatnan. Ha-mafrish mos l'naziruso. After 30 days of being a nazir, you have to bring korbanos to conclude your naziris. The person set aside money for his korbanos, but he didn't say this amount should go for this should go for this. The din is lo nanin. Normally, kotshim, there's a law of me'ilah. You can't benefit from it. But here, you just separated money. Eventually, you're going to buy korbanos from it. At this stage, lo nanin, you're not allowed to have anah, but v'lo boyali. You did benefit from it. You don't have to bring a korban osha. B'nei sheru'uyin lova kulan shlomim. Technically, all the money could be spent to buy shlomim. There is no meila by shlomim because you're allowed to eat shlomim. So it's a technicality. But mace, if the guy died and he had separated the money, he had this kind of money that had not been earmarked for a specific korban. Yiplul Nadova. They're put into the community chest to buy olos for Kitzah Mizbeach. Now, Mifuroshin, if he had set aside money and he said this amount for a chatas, this amount for an olah, to make chatas yolich li amamelech. He died. A chatas shemesu baleh is lemisa. So the money is thrown into the amamelech. Now, you can't spend the money and derive hana from it, lechatchila, but there's no meila. Because nobody can benefit from it because they had to be burnt or destroyed completely. It was a chata shemesu baleh. Now, demei oila yavi ben oila. The guy had designated money for his Nazir's korbanos, and he specifically designated some money for an olah. You can bring an olah with that money. They can purchase an animal and offer it as an olah. Demei shlamim, the money for shlamim, yavi ben shlamim. V'necholim liyom echad. Normally a shlamim that's offered as an adava can be eaten for 2 days. The nazir shlamim can only be eaten for 1 day. So therefore, the shlamim can only be eaten for 1 day. Ve'ein te'unin lechem. And normally, you bring bread along with the nazir shlamim. But there are certain requirements about the bread. You have to put it on the hands of the nazir. You have to wave it. The nazir is not alive, so no bread is brought. And here's the Gemara's punchline: Va'oila ushlamim de nazir de machshirinin. An ola and a shlamim is not brought for atonement. It's brought to be machshirim, that the nazir can go back to drink wine and go to funerals. It's coming to be machshirim. And yet, and you said before that there's a distinction between korbanos brought for kapara versus korbanos brought lahachshara. That we said korbanos brought for atonement can be offered after someone's death, but korbanos brought lahachshara cannot. Here we bring proof that the machshirin in you could bring it even after the death of a person. Rav Papa, Hachikam Rav Yirmiyah lo matziru hechsher kavua de bol achar misa. U'de nazir hechsher she'ena kavua. If bringing the korbanos are the only way to be machshir, then there's no example where it's brought after the person's death. And the Gemara says that these korbanos is not considered a kavua. And the Gemara will tell us why. You don't have to bring all three, the Gemara is going to end up saying. Even if you only brought one, and then you shave your head, you're okay. So it's not a fixed thing. That's why over there you can bring it. But in cases where that's the only way to do it, the dead person would not be able to bring it. Okay. So you see, gentlemen, Menachos, it builds upon builds. What do I mean? We spent 120 blot learning Masechtas Zvachim, and we we put a certain amount of data under our belt. Pigul, all the various things we've learned. Now, regarding Kochim, you see with Menachos, they're adding a level of complexity, where if you hadn't learned Zvachim, you wouldn't be able to learn Menachos. You got to learn Zvachim before Menachos. And then we have the armamentarium, the ammunition, to be able to deal with the Sugyas of Menachos, because we've been through the Sugyas and Zvachim. It's very clear. It's not always clear. Like Yuma, you can learn Masechta Yuma, you can learn Rosh Hashanah. One doesn't. You could learn Sukkah, you could learn Psachim. One is not connected to the other. It's similar, for example, Erevin. If you hadn't learned Masechta Shabbos, it would be difficult to go right into Erevin without the knowledge of Masechta Shabbos. So too here, you see the interconnectedness of Masechta Menachos to Masechta Zvachim. It's like every sugya, everything is intertwined. Okay, so tomorrow, 7 o'clock, Daf Yomi, and 8 o'clock, Perek Vav of Sefer Esther. We'll try to learn Perek Vav.
Correct.
Shabbos.
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 Thank you.